Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Dux-Soup webinar. In this webinar, Giles Garnett, the Head of Professional Services, will show you the top 7 benefits of using Dux-Soup Pro. Live chat is being monitored by me, Jin, the Head of Customer Support, and at the end of the webinar, we will have a Q&A with Giles. Thank you for joining us today, and let's start our webinar.
Hello and good morning, good afternoon or good evening to you all, and welcome to this week's webinar, Dux-Soup webinar. My name is Giles Garnett and I am Head of Professional Services here at Dux-Soup. And as well as presenting the webinar program, I also run the booster calls, the technical calls and some of the support calls. So I've had direct interaction with many Dux-Soup users over the last couple of years. Jin, who you just heard from, is our Head of Customer Support, and she will be monitoring and answering as many of your questions as she can on the chat while I'm presenting. Please, as always, do try to keep the questions on topic so that they are useful for the whole audience. And if you have other questions, you can always visit our support pages where there is a live chat option to connect directly with the support team. And today's topic, as Jin just mentioned, is our top 7 benefits of Dux-Soup Pro. So you've downloaded the Dux-Soup Starter Edition, you've maybe had a play around with the system and want to understand what you can do if you take the plunge and go for the paid version. That didn't work. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm going to compare the Starter Edition functionality with the Pro version, explaining what the differences are and what they mean to you as an end user. With the free version, as you're probably aware, you're able to carry out a limited number of activities such as auto visits and manually adding and removing tags. And I'm going to go over what we consider to be our top 7 benefits of going pro with Dux-Soup. I'm going to go through these slides and go over the 7 items that we see. And then I will have some time for a live demo to go through each of these as well to show you in real time what they actually mean and how you can use that functionality. And then there'll be time for Q&A at the end, as always, hopefully. And with a bit of luck, everything will cooperate this week technically. So our top 7 benefits. What we're going to cover today is sending out invitations, how you can send invitations out during an auto visit, messaging and the different types of messaging that you can use Dux-Soup for, tagging, how you can use auto tags using Dux-Soup when you carry out an auto visit, and what that means to you in the environment with LinkedIn and Dux-Soup, how you can download your data and the different types of data you can download, the revisiting tool, the revisiting functionality within Dux-Soup, so how you can create your custom lists, auto-endorsing, again, it's just an activity that you can carry out on profiles as you auto visit, and then control and visibility, a very important factor when it comes to handling lead generation activities within the LinkedIn environment. So let's skip through these slides and cover each of these 7 items. So with Dux-Soup, you can auto invite with a personalized message. And as you can see here from this screenshot, this comes from the Dux-Soup options. And if you have this action enabled, you can include a personalized message with a connection request, which can then be sent to your target contacts during a visit using either standard LinkedIn or Sales Navigator in either of those environments. And as you can see at the bottom here, you have some markers, first name, last name, etc., that you can use to make this message look personalized. A LinkedIn limitation here is that you are limited to only 300 characters in your connection request message. And maybe when we get some time in the demo a bit later, I can show you how that works. But that's how you would auto invite. You'd enable this option and you'd hit the visit and connect button to your list of target URLs or your list within LinkedIn. Messaging. So during an auto visit to your first degree connections, you can also send a message to that population. And similarly to what we saw on the last screen, you can also use these markers here to make your message look personalized. The big difference here is that these people are now first degree connections. These are people who've accepted your connection request, and you now have 3,000 characters to be able to populate the message with. So you can send a much more extensive message with a lot more information in there. Another activity that you can carry out within the messaging functionality is to auto InMail any profile. So during an auto visit, you can use the InMail functionality if you have the InMail credits from a paid account within within LinkedIn. Remember, of course, you only have a limited number of InMail credits available to you per month. So you can, if you're using automation, you can get through these quite quickly. But sending an InMail, you get your credit back if you get a response from that individual. But again, here, these are for non-first degree connections, and you have a possibility to send a much more extensive message here, but it does then get deducted from your credits if they don't respond. Tagging. Now, we've talked about this in many of our past webinars, and we'll come on to how this works in reality when we look at the demo. And what you can do is, as you auto-visit your profiles, a list of targets, for example, you can tag profiles with up to 5 tags at once. Personally, I like to tag profiles relating to perhaps their location and the profession and maybe the industry. I tend to link my tags to the search criteria by which I've found my targets. So you can apply these tags as you auto visit these profiles, and then later on we can also show how you can then, in the Dux-Soup menu here, you can search by tag and filter your lists and actually start to sort of build up a library of tags so you can easily find and sort the different people that you visited in the past. You can also manually add and remove tags when you visit profiles as well, and that's the little pop-up box that you get from the Dux-Soup robot on the right-hand side when you open a profile. Data downloading. So when you're using Dux-Soup Pro, every time you visit a profile, Dux-Soup gathers some information for you, and it stores that under your visit data set of data within the browser, and you can download that data. You can also choose to have Dux-Soup to scan lists within LinkedIn. Now, scanning is very different to visiting because you're not clicking on profiles. So you only gather very high-level information against each profile, first name, last name, and the URL, be that a Sales Navigator URL or a standard URL, depending on from which environment you're scanning. Different lists contain different amounts of information depending on when you're scanning, but it then helps you to build up a library of information through which you can then create perhaps custom lists to go further, and that leads us on nicely to our next functionality, which is the revisit data. So once you've created your custom file, perhaps from scanned data or from some historical data or other sources that you have, as long as you have the URL of your target, the first name and the last name, you can use the revisit tool, the revisit data tool here, to upload a CSV file. That CSV file then can be all your list of URLs that you want to target. So that could be, for example, a list of second and third degree connections that you want to send an invitation request to, or perhaps it could be a list of first degree connections who you want to send some sort of an outreach message to. All of this is part of the Pro functionality. Endorsing. This is used quite widely by a lot of users, and it's only available within standard LinkedIn. You can't endorse a profile within the Sales Navigator environment. It's one of the LinkedIn functionality limitations of Sales Navigator. But within standard LinkedIn, when you carry out an auto visit to a first degree connection, you can choose to auto endorse 1, 3, or 5 skills from that connection. This can be a very handy way to engage or re-engage with your first degree network. There's a lot of people out there with vast first degree networks which are effectively dormant. They don't have a lot of interaction with them. So I see a lot of people then going through a selection of their first degree connections, not necessarily messaging them, but just visiting them and auto-endorsing, or perhaps maybe messaging, but yeah, also auto-endorsing, because it can trigger an interaction with that particular audience. It's a way to break the ice and stimulate a conversation. So that's endorsing. And then finally, on our list of 7 items is control and visibility. So with Dux-Soup Pro, you have the ability to be able to use the planner you see here on the left-hand side. This basically enables you to control when the robot is active on your behalf. This is a very important part of the functionality because you don't want the robot to be active at certain times of the day. Perhaps you don't want to send out invitations at 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning, for example, but also if you're running automation, we recommend you don't carry out manual activities on your account at the same time. That can look suspicious, like suspicious activity to LinkedIn. So this helps you separate and plan your day with automation during certain parts of the day, and then breaks in your automation when you're carrying out manual actions within the LinkedIn environment. Secondly, you can also control the speed of activity. So under the throttling tab here on the right-hand side, you can see here that you can control the robot speed. We always recommend running it slowly as possible. Slow and steady wins the race when it comes to automation. And you can control exactly how many profile visits, connection requests, and direct messages the robot will, how many activities it will carry out for you per day there. And Dux-Soup, of course, adds to the control of that there to keep your account as safe as possible. On the visibility side with Dux-Soup Pro, you also have access to the Dux-Dash. Now within the Dux-Dash in Dux-Soup Pro, you have access on the left-hand side, and I'll show you this when we come to demoing this in a minute, the activity log tab, and there you can click on that and you will then see an historical record of all the actions that Dux-Soup has carried out on your account on your behalf. And that could be sending an invitation, sending a message to first degree connections, sending an InMail, auto-endorsing, all those sorts of activities. All of those actions are logged here in the activity log. So you then have a nice historical record of everything that you've done. And that information is searchable. You have a search field here, so you can type in the name of the person, for example, or part of their URL, and you can then see exactly what actions have carried out against that profile in the past. So those are our 7 top benefits of going pro with Dux-Soup compared to the starter edition. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to open this profile here. Now this particular profile here, I've only got the starter edition, and as you can see here, if I click on my Dux-Soup options, you'll see that pretty much all of the activities here are grayed out. I have the ability to use the skipping functionality. I don't have access to throttling, connection, planner. I get some user information, etc. But what I can do from here is if I was logged onto my LinkedIn account, I would be able to carry out up to, I believe it's 100 visits per day, just auto visits to profiles. And that's pretty much the functionality you have there within the starter edition. Now, if I want to upgrade this to Pro, I would click on the Go Pro button down the bottom here, and then enter my details, my credentials essentially, and go to the checkout and sign in and update to the Pro plan. If I very quickly now swap screens, let's get rid of that one. Come back here, and we will now go here. And as you can see here, I already have the Pro edition. Now I know I've got the Pro edition here because the Dux-Soup icon is red. If you have the starter edition, it's black. The Pro edition is red, and for those who maybe have Turbo, I don't know if there's many amongst our audience today, though, then the icon is turquoise. Now I say this every time I do a demo, so do also feel free. This is my LinkedIn page here. This is myself here at Dux-Soup. If you'd like to send me a connection request, I'd be very happy to be connected with any of our Dux-Soup users out there. So feel free to connect to me, yeah, we can exchange ideas, etc., about Dux-Soup in the future. So yeah, feel free to contact me through LinkedIn. That's absolutely no problems at all. So we're going to talk about the various actions that we can carry out with Dux-Soup Pro. Now, as always, we want to be able to have a list of data that we want to process with Dux-Soup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry out a very simple search for maybe a, blimey, can't type this afternoon. Oh, there we are. We're going to just look for product managers within LinkedIn. I'm going to basically here find a list of people that I can get Dux-Soup to carry an action out against. And this is a people list, so this is a search I'm carrying out within standard LinkedIn. I'll maybe do something in Sales Navigator later if that's of interest to people. what I'm going to do is I'm going to narrow this search down by location. So let's go for the Randstad here in the Netherlands. Now, for those who aren't aware, of course, I'd say it every time, I think, when you're carrying out a search in standard LinkedIn, LinkedIn will only show you 10 results per page and only 100 pages. So you only see the first 1,000 results of any search within standard LinkedIn. So let's narrow this down a little bit more. Let's just go for second-degree connections. Probably won't get this all the way down to 1,000, but I'm down to 17,000 now. And what you'll notice now is, as always with Dux-Soup, when it recognizes that there's a list of data or set of data that it can process on the page, the icon turns green and it says Dux-Soup at your service. And it's at this point you can then trigger any of the auto actions that I've talked about before, depending on what list you have in front of you. If I click on my Dux-Soup icon here, then you'll see I've got some various quick options here. I can visit profiles, I can visit and connect, or I can scan the profiles. But actually, if I want to have a bit more visibility as to the actions I want to carry out against this list, I would go to my options button here in the top right-hand corner. And here I have then all of my automated actions, or my available automated actions against the list that I've got. So, for example, this group of people here, they are all second-degree connections, so I'm not connected to these people. So perhaps I would want to send these people a connection request. And if I'd wanted to include my connection request message with that, I would enable this box here, I would tick the box here, and then I would type my message, hi, space underscore FN underscore, and that would pull out the first name data of that individual during an auto visit. And I can type my connection message here. What I want to do here is write something that's actually going to stimulate them to read the message and hopefully visit my profile back. So have a think about the messaging. There's all sorts of articles available on our blog post page with different philosophies and the psychology around the types of connection messages to write there. And as you can see here, we've got a little counter in the right-hand side, which counts how many characters of the 300 you've used. Very useful functionality that. I would always advise, if you're using the markers, to keep reasonably well under that limit, because of course some names or company names may be longer, for example, and you don't want to go over the 300 because that would truncate the message and it would look a little bit suspicious in your messaging if that message gets cut off part way. So if you wanted to send connection messages out to that list, you would type in your connection request message there, and then all I would need to do then to set that off to run, I won't do it right now, I'd go back to this page here and I would set the Dux-Soup robots off, visit and connect, and Dux-Soup would then go out and visit each of these profiles in turn and send them a connection request message. While I'm doing that, I may also want to, for example, tag these profiles. And here we can also, during this auto visit, tag these profiles. So maybe here I would want to say they're all product managers. And maybe I also want to say, well, they're based in the Netherlands. So I've maybe put 2 tags against those people. And as Dux-Soup goes out and visits each of these profiles in turn, it will send the connection request message, and it'll save my custom tags against each of those profiles as it does it. It will also save a system tag to say that it knows that I've invited that person using Dux-Soup. So that's also quite useful for me as well. So all of these actions are available to me as I carry out these visits to these people. There are a few other actions here. I can follow profiles using standard LinkedIn. I can save the profile as a PDF using standard LinkedIn as well. That's not available in Sales Navigator. That's not a function you can use within Sales Navigator. And if you're using Sales Navigator, you could save the profile as a lead, etc. There are various different things you can carry out there as you visit second and third degree connections. If I now swap briefly to Sales Navigator, let's carry on this search, I think, within Sales Navigator. There we go. So now I've got a similar search criteria, but against Sales Navigator. Again, Dux-Soup in a second will recognize this as a list. There we go, it's turned green, and I can carry out exactly the same actions from this environment as well. So similarly, I would click on the Dux-Soup icon and I'd hit visit and connect. And the same thing would happen from within Sales Navigator as would happen within standard LinkedIn. Now, there are a few different options available there. I could, for example, as I say, save a profile as a lead in Sales Navigator. And indeed, I could, if I was wanting to, if I'd specifically narrowed down my targets enough, I may not want to send connection requests to these people, but I may want to send them an InMail. And I'd have to do that from within the Sales Navigator environment. Remember, you have a limit as to how many InMail credits you have per month. And you can burn through those quite quickly with automation, but that's something to be aware of. I believe if you're visiting people within groups that you're a member of, you have extra InMail credits to be able to use in those situations as well. So that's something worth looking into. So we've done about there inviting people, second and third degree connections. As I mentioned earlier, you can also message first degree connections during auto visits. So if I go back to, for example, my search here within standard LinkedIn, and rather than looking at second degree connections, I'm going to look at my first degree network. Get rid of the location here as well. Let's get rid of that one. And let's just look at any product managers within my first degree network. There we are. I've got 551 product managers within my network. And I could now carry out auto visits to this list of people. And I then have a different set of options available to me within Dux-Soup because these people are existing connections. So I could now send them a personalized message using standard LinkedIn or Sales Navigator, 3,000 characters, as I mentioned earlier. Same markers available as with the connection request. Of course, you have that greater scope because you have the possibility to send a much longer message. Again, you can tag these profiles, and maybe while you're visiting those ones, you might want to say, yeah, I want to just remember that these are first degree connections, so you may want to add a first tag there. Then you know that you've also tagged these people as that level of connection, for example. If you were also maybe sending out a marketing message to these people, you might also want to put a tag about your campaign or whatever to help you sort out who you've sent those that information to in the past. While we're talking about tags there, if I just, for example, go to my Dux-Soup icon here, I go down to the bottom here and I've got this functionality here to search by tag. If I press that button there, I can then see here, for example, all of the tags that I've used in demos before. If I look at one of my tags, for example, these are all people who are members of a certain discussion group. All of these people have got this GHAC tag. And in a second, as you've been tagging your connections in term, for example, you can see here, you can now run Dux-Soup from this environment. So within the tag search tool, if you've got a good library of tags and you've been effectively going through your connections and your first degree connections and everybody as you visit them, you can build up a good library and then actually ultimately run your activities from this environment so you know exactly who you've reached out to in the past. And maybe you want to exclude people from certain tags. So if you've got a good record of campaigns you've sent out, etc., this way you can really control exactly who you're getting Dux-Soup to reach out to based upon the tags that you've applied to those profiles. I think, as I've said earlier, you can also add and remove tags add and remove tags from profiles manually. If I just open a profile very briefly, and over on the right-hand side, when we see the pop-up come up in a second, when Dux-Soup's loaded up the profile, here I can now add and remove tags manually here if I want to, so that I can then add and remove people from those particular lists in the future. Okay, so we've talked about inviting, we've talked about messaging, and now we've talked about tagging. So now let's talk about data and what we can collect from the data. So as we carry out visits to each profile, Dux-Soup is collecting some data for us. And if I click on the Dux-Soup icon, I've got the download data button here in the top right-hand corner. With Dux-Soup Pro, you can see two sets of data. You have visit data, which is data that the robot collects on your behalf every time you open a profile. So I've just visited somebody there, so I've just seen that go up there. If I click on that visit data button there, and see that creates me a CSV file. Now the best way to do this is actually to import that CSV file so you get the correct breakdown, the correct characters within your file. If I just go here and I go to my downloads, that one, let's import that a second. Rather than just double clicking on the CSV file, otherwise you don't get all the correct characters. Best way to do this is probably like that. And there we are, we'll just do load. In a second, it'll all come up, and there we are. So this is the data that we collect during an auto visit. So these particular two profiles, this is you get the ID number, so that's the database ID number from LinkedIn, the time that I visited the profile, the URL, the picture, whether it's a first, second, or third degree connection, first name, middle name, last name, number of connections, summary, job title, how long they've worked, where they're working, URLs, website. If it's available, you'd also see emails, phone numbers, etc. here, and other information as well, and indeed your tags if you've been tagging those profiles. So that's a sample of visit data, and you collect that data through every visit that you carry out using Dux-Soup. Let's not save that. So there we go. Now, as well as being able to carry out these visits or visit and connect profiles, etc., you can scan profiles. And if you scan profiles, Dux-Soup literally skims the high-level data that's on the screen as you see it now, and it'll just grab that and put that into a CSV file. I'm not going to run that now, but what I will show you is the data that you can download from it. If you click on the download data, and you can see here I scanned some data earlier so I could demonstrate this to you. Again, that creates me a CSV file, and I will just import that into Excel again in the same way as I did just now. So I'll go to data from a CSV file, downloads, and it's that most recent one that I just did. Just takes a bit longer. There we go. Now, for anybody who's wondering, as always, and I should have said this earlier, this webinar is being recorded, will be sent out to anybody who's registered, and will be made available on the website in the coming days as well. So I know I'm doing this quite quickly, so if you're not keeping up, then don't worry, the recording will be available on the website. So what you can see here, this is scan data, and this is a slightly different set of data because I'm only picking up here some high-level information from that page that we looked at just now, and it depends what page you scan it from. So these top, let's have a look, the top 31 lines, so 30 records, those are people I've scanned in standard LinkedIn, because I can see the standard LinkedIn URL here. I get their ID, their database ID, the time I scanned it, the URL, first name, last name, job title, and location. Now, if I do that in Sales Navigator, you'll see here from line 32 downwards, I get a different URL because I scanned those profiles out of Sales Navigator, but I get the same ID number, I get the time as well, first name, last name, job title, location, and a bit more information there because I've scanned it from a different environment. There's a bit more information available within that, on that page, than there is in the standard LinkedIn page. So this kind of shows you the data that you can scan and download as you go. And that leads us nicely into, I'm not going to save that, into the next one on my list, which is the revisiting tool. So say, for example, you've scanned all of your first degree connections. Maybe you've gone to My Network, and you've gone into My First Degree Connections, and you've decided I'm going to scan the entire lot, and I'm going to capture that information, and then I've got basically the start of a database of my entire first degree network, and then you can organize your outreach to them. You can create custom lists and upload them into Dux-Soup for Dux-Soup to process. So if I now go to my Dux-Soup icon, go down here on the left-hand side, I've got the revisit data tool. From this page here, I can now upload my CSV file, and as long as I've got the 3 columns of profile, first name, and last name, those are the three most important, you can build your own custom lists. Now, I'm just going to take that file that I just downloaded, that scan data file, and show that on here a second. So if I go here and I go to my most recently downloaded file, I open that, and there is enough information on this page here for Dux-Soup to be able to carry out the actions. In a second, we'll see the Dux-Soup icon go green any minute now. There we go. It just takes a minute or two, depending on how long the list is. But this way, you can have complete control. So there we are. The first 30 were all standard LinkedIn URLs. Lines 31 onwards were Sales Navigator URLs. But this way, you can create your own custom lists to decide exactly who you want to reach out to, and you're not then reliant upon the algorithms of LinkedIn as to the order that the data appears. You can control exactly who you're reaching out to for either connecting to or for messaging if it's first degree network. Really powerful tool, this. There's again quite a lot of information on our blog pages about this, about how you can also build custom fields, etc. into this and add extra customization of text. We covered that last year in a webinar, and I think we'll probably be covering that later on again this year. We'll revisit that one again and cover that as well. But that gives you an idea as to creating a custom list and then being able to build that data and maybe combine lists together and really sort of have absolute control over the people that you're wanting to reach out to with Dux-Soup. Next one was endorsing. Just touch on this very briefly. So only when you're visiting first degree connections in standard LinkedIn, you can also enable the endorsing functionality here in your Dux-Soup options, again under your actions. So here under the endorsement section, you can choose to endorse 1, 3, or 5 skills. Only available in standard LinkedIn. That functionality is not available in Sales Navigator. It's a LinkedIn limitation, unfortunately. So yeah, only make use of that when you're doing first degrees in standard LinkedIn. And then finally, the number 7 on our list was control and visibility. So if I go up here, there's a few different things here that help you. Skipping is fairly self-explanatory. I won't go into that detail now because that's also available in the starter edition. Under throttling here, we can control exactly how quickly the robot runs, how many pages will scan per minute, the speed and maybe the pauses that we have between so many visits, and indeed how many profile visits, how many connection requests, and how many direct messages we're happy for the robot to carry out for us per day. Always recommend to run things as slowly as possible. Remember that we're trying to replicate human behavior here, so it's got to be humanly possible what you're doing on the platform in order to keep your account as safe as possible. I personally always have apply a random correction to the daily limit ticked, just because then it's not always a precise number every day and it doesn't look like there's any patterns there. But if you use this here in conjunction with the planner, if I go to the planner here, you can see here I've broken mine up a little bit. That's because there are certain times of the day when I want to carry out manual actions within LinkedIn. So I make sure the robot's not running at those times. So for example, on a Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I want to be manually active on LinkedIn, so I make sure the robots will not be active. I don't want to be sending out messages or connection requests at that time. Remember that Dux-Soup will only run against whatever list you have set it off to run against. And if you close that tab, perhaps by accident or maybe deliberately, the robot will stop. So when you've got your list of people, so say I've got Dux-Soup running against this list here, if you close this tab, Dux-Soup will stop. That's something very important to remember. Now, what I've got into the habit of doing when I've got the robot running is I will actually right-click on the tab that it's running on and I will pin that tab so that I don't accidentally close it. It's then tucked away in the corner. I can then leave it running there and I can go and carry on doing with the other work that I'm doing. I won't accidentally close that. And then when I've finished it, maybe I'll unpin it and then carry on. Another one that's quite important when thinking about this, if you go to your Chrome settings, if you accidentally close Chrome, one of the settings that it's important to consider is to always have continue where you left off, and then Chrome will remember what page you were on last so it'll automatically go back there. So if you're partway through a list, for example, you accidentally close Chrome, it will open back up there, and then you can start the robot off again from there. Okay, so that's sort of controlling when the robot works. The other thing you have with Dux-Soup Pro is accessibility to the Dux-Dash. So if I click on my Dux-Soup icon here and I go down to the bottom right-hand corner, and the Dux-Dash opens me up a new tab. And here we have a menu on the left-hand side. First one, of course, is your profile information, your user ID, etc., associated with your account. You have access to the Dux store here, where you can purchase Dux-Soup points. I won't go into that in detail now, but that information is all available on our website, of course. But then here under the activity log, and this is the most interesting thing, we can see here exactly what activity has happened on your account using Dux-Soup. And you can see here it records each invitation that you've sent out. It records, I will find some messages. There you are. I've got a message there sent out as well. It records any activity that you've carried out using Dux-Soup. So that could be sending an invitation, it could be messaging, it could be endorsing, for example, it could be sending an InMail. All of this information is tracked here, and you can have a look at it, and you can see exactly what message it is, what you've sent out to those people, and when that activity was completed. So that way you have full visibility of what's happened, and you have control by using the throttling settings and the planner. Just go back very quickly to my list. So those are our 7 top benefits of going from the starter edition to Pro. Your control over your invitations and your auto messaging and your customized messaging, your messaging to your first degree connections, or indeed your InMails, your automatic tagging of the groups of people that you're visiting, being able to download your data, scan data, your visit data, etc. The ability to revisit and have absolute control over your lists, endorsing, which can help with re-engaging with perhaps dormant connections, and then your control and visibility, which makes sure that you're keeping your account as safe as possible, and you can see exactly what's happened there in the past. I think I've probably talked for long enough now. I've just spotted the time. Jin, any questions?
Hi. Yes, I have a couple, not a lot.
Cool.
So quite a lot of users asked, can I send videos or files in messages or connection request messages or InMails?
You can't put attachments on there at the moment. It is a request that is sitting. If you go to our suggestions page, I'll just open that up. It's this one here, feedback.dux-soup.com. Include images in messages to first degree connect. It's under consideration. Upvote it, add comments, etc. And that way, it's something that we have looked at building at. It's not something we've done at the moment. It is something that's under consideration, but upvote it if it's something that's particularly important. You can put URLs in your messages, and those will be rendered correctly. It'll be picked up as a URL and would appear correctly in the message. But no, at the moment you cannot add attachments, but URLs, yes.
Thank you. Another very common question today was, can I close LinkedIn while Dux-Soup is running, or work on another tab, or minimize the tab that Dux-Soup is working on?
So if Dux-Soup is running on a tab, you should keep that tab open. It doesn't have to be at the front of the screen. I would not recommend minimizing it because Chrome doesn't like that. If you minimize something, it tends to stall activity that's happening. Remember, we're wanting the robots to replicate human behavior. So if I just go back here, if I was, for example, running my activities against this page here, I would leave Chrome open, but then I can work in other tabs. I can open a new window, for example, and work in that. As long as this tab here remains open, it can be in the background, that's absolutely fine. Dux-Soup will continue to run. You can run other applications on top, for example. I would not recommend minimizing it, because if you minimize it, then that tends to stifle the activity on the actual browser itself. It's part of how Chrome is put together. So yeah, it can be certainly in the background, and that's normally what people would do, is leave it running in the background. Don't recommend to minimize it because that can lead to the robot stalling or not carrying out actions. It needs to think that it's visible on screen for it to mimic the human behavior correctly.
Thank you so far. Oh yes, another question. Any free trials available for Pro?
We don't do trials for Pro. We do, if you sign up for Turbo, then you get your first week free. But then also, if you, am I correct in saying if you contact support, then there is the possibility for free trials on Turbo? Is that correct, Jin?
If you do not have a Dux-Soup Pro, or if you have Dux-Soup Pro already and you want to try Turbo, you can contact Dux-Soup support. But if you are completely completely new user, you can set up a 7-day free trial via our website. That's for Turbo only.
Yeah, so we don't do free trials on Pro. But yeah, I mean, you can sign up for a month and try it. And yeah, I believe it's around €15 a month off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But you can go to the website for your local pricing, because it's, let's just go there. There we go. Go to the pricing. There we go. Based upon annual billing, those are the prices, and based on monthly billing, those are the prices. That's based upon my location, so you would get the local currency to where you're based. Any further questions?
Yeah, the last question about capturing emails. So can Dux-Soup capture emails for second and third degree connection?
So yes, Dux-Soup can look for emails of second and third degree connections if you purchase Dux points. Now, remember, when you're carrying out an auto visit to any profile, it depends upon the security settings of that profile as to whether you see the email address. So when you're visiting first degree connections, you probably see 90 to 95% of email addresses, because that's how the percentage of people that make them available to first degree connections. There's a very small percentage of second and third degree connections that are visible. Maybe 5%, between 3 and 5% probably are visible to you, because people have opened their profile and opened their email address to be visible. However, through the Dux-Dash, and I'll just show you how you get there again, you click on your Dux-Soup icon and you go down to the Dux-Dash here in the bottom right. Here you can have access to the Dux store, and this is where it's pretty self-explanatory. You can here purchase Dux points, and it costs 1 point per successful find. So find email addresses of profiles you are not directly connected to. So that's second and third degree. Once enabled, this service will automatically be triggered whenever a profile is visited, either manually or during an auto visit, if you enable it. And when you start your auto visits, you get that option pop up as to whether to enable it. So if I just go here very quickly, and if I just press the Visit and Connect button here, you can see here, would you like Dux-Soup to look for email addresses other than your first degree connections? You'd say yes, and it requires Dux-Soup points for that to work. And Dux-Soup would look up to see if it has a record of an email address against that profile. And yeah, a successful lookup costs a single point. An unsuccessful lookup doesn't cost you. I think that was the complete answer, wasn't it?
So, thank you. Last question. A lot of users asking, is there a limit on how many invitations to connect I can send?
Okay, so it depends very much upon your oh goodness, yes, that's an open-ended question. So about a month or 6 weeks ago, we did a webinar on account safety and recommended settings, etc., where we go into quite a lot of detail. Now, probably the easiest answer to that is if I point you towards our blog pages. Here, under using LinkedIn automation safely, we have a blog post here which is associated with the webinar that we presented towards the end of January. And what we have here is all sorts of different bits and pieces. Using LinkedIn automation safely here, these are the sorts of factors that you need to take into consideration when you're considering how many invitations to send out, because there is no hard and fast rule. You need to think about how many total number of connection requests to send per day, so how many profile views. You need to think about the size of your first degree network, how many people have marked you as I don't know this person, what percentage of people are accepting your connection requests. We've always recommended you don't send out more than 5% of you don't try and grow your network by more than 5% per day. But we're also seeing more and more notifications from LinkedIn around limitations on accounts. So we're always saying start off very slowly. If you have no problems, then increase very slowly as well. So start at the lower end and then build up from there. One of the other things that we've seen recently is that actually if you change your messages on a fairly regular basis, you see less problems, or fewer problems. That was bad English, wasn't it? You'll see fewer problems if you change your actual messages. So LinkedIn are obviously keeping an eye on the consistency of messages, and if you change them regularly, you tend to see fewer problems. There is a difference between having a paid account or a free account. Of course, if you've got a Sales Navigator or a Business Pro account, for example, you'll be able to do an awful lot more than if you just have a free account and you have a limited number of searches or profile views that you can carry out per day. So yeah, keep an eye on that one. I know that's not an absolute precise answer, because it depends on lots and lots of factors. So I can't give you a straight answer for per person what would be a safe number. But do your research, have a look at this particular blog here using LinkedIn automation safely. There's a lot of information in here, and there is a recording of the webinar as well on the website.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Cool. Okay, so just to let everybody know, it's been posted on the websites today. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to be doing a webinar on how to use Dux-Soup in conjunction with Salesforce, using the webhook functionality and Zapier and Integromat to sort of bring the power of Dux-Soup and LinkedIn together with the Salesforce environment. So that's something we'll be demoing in 2 weeks' time. So that's the webhook functionality is available if you have the Turbo edition of Dux-Soup. And as we mentioned earlier, you can try Turbo for free for a week. If you contact support, there's options there, so you can have a play around with that. So that's coming up in 2 weeks' time, and we've got some exciting product news, hopefully as well, coming in the coming weeks. So keep an eye out on the website, and I'm sure you'll be seeing some exciting news coming soon. Just to inform you as well, we have availability on both booster sessions and technical sessions. So if you're a new user to Dux-Soup and you need help getting going and building your confidence in how to use the system, how to get the best out of it, and being able to sort of familiarize yourself with the environment, you can book a booster session through our website. If you're sort of a more advanced user and you're looking at setting up webhooks, for example, in Zapier or Integromat, and building an integration with another system, then you can book a technical session through the website. So that's all available as usual. Usual useful links, which I'm sure probably needs updating, possibly. I ought to put the feedback page on there. If you look up feedback.dux-soup.com, that's where we have our suggestions page, and I'll add that to this list here as well. So yeah, you can go there and upvote any of the suggestions that are on there, or indeed add your own. There's a huge number in there, so it's worth having a look through the list, see if there's functionality there that you think is particularly pertinent to you. We do try to listen, and yeah, that's where we'll see some product developments coming in the coming weeks, which relates to some of those requests. That's everything from me. I'll hand back over to Jin to close off for the day.
Thank you everyone for attending, and if you have any further questions, please contact Dux-Soup support via live chat or email. You can find how to access live chat or email support via our website. So thank you for attending, and see you next time.